Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Toss-Up. I'm Riley Woodall. 16 teams remain in the Women's Basketball National Tournament as we enter the waning hours of March, all competing for the right to call themselves champions of the sport in 2025. The storylines are sizzling, folks. USC looks to keep its national championship hopes alive, but can the Trojans win it all without their star player Juju Watkins on the floor? South Carolina continues its march towards 3 national titles in 4 seasons. Don Staley's squad showing no signs of slowing down anytime soon. Hannah Hidalgo and Haley Van Lith's crew square off in the Sweet 16. Can HVL win one in her farewell tour, or will the young gun sophomore add to her already impressive resume? UConn and Paige Beckers, don't forget about them, trying to return to the mountaintop of women's hoops for the first time in nearly a decade, and so much more. We've got all the analysis for you coming up on the Toss-Up. And welcome to the Toss-Up, everyone. I'm joined by Ari Betterly, Ian Plaskoff, and Graham Nash. Guys, thanks for coming on the show to talk some women's college basketball March Madness. We've got the best of the best going at it from the Sweet 16 to the national championship. I'm excited. I know you guys are excited. Who has been your favorite team and favorite player to watch throughout this tournament so far?
You know what? I'm just going to start us off with somebody you have to talk about when you're talking about women's hoops and women's basketball. She's a face. She's a name. You've all heard it. Paige Beckers and UConn. I mean, wow, what a season they've had. And honestly, I'm thinking about last year with Iowa and UConn playing back-to-back in that duel, and they lost it by just one call. I'm thinking they're going to run it back this year, go back to the Final Four where they have some unfinished business and take it all the way to the finals. And I know that Paige Beckers can. She's treading in the right direction. She had 34 points just the other day against Mississippi State, and I think this team is just all together rounding out to be so powerful. What about you guys?
Postseason Paige, man, she's been fantastic. Go ahead, Ian.
So there's so much talk about the top seeds, the 1s, the 2s, the 3s even. I'm going with the 4 seed. Maryland has been so much fun to watch in the second half of the season, and especially that round of 32 game against Alabama. I mean, come on, that's the best basketball you'll ever see. But for a player, I'm going to go to the other side of that game, and it wasn't a losing effort though, but Sarah Ashley Barker, 45 points, fighting to play a Sweet 16 game in her hometown. A true joy to watch, and those 3 free throws at the end, just ice cold.
Yep, clutch time. Win it in clutch time. It's all about it. Graham.
Well, Ian may or may not have taken mine, so I'll have to get creative here. No, I'm
There's
kidding.
plenty to talk about.
There's so many.
So many stars.
I'm fine, guys. I'm fine. No, the one that really comes to mind for me has got to be Kiki Iriafen and USC. Just because of that game against Mississippi State in the round of 32, when Juju Watkins went down, that could have easily made the team kind of collapse, right? You know, it's just, I'll admit, I'm a sucker for players overcoming mental battles and kind of surrounding their teammates and performing despite, a tough loss. And that's about the toughest loss that you can have. When you lose arguably the best player in the country, and then Kiki Iriafen goes out and drops 36, they win by 37. I mean, come on, that is just Hollywood TV in my mind.
I mentioned it in the intro. My 2 are going to be facing off in the Sweet 16. Haley Van Lith and TCU, and Hannah Hidalgo and Notre Dame. Those 2 teams, so fun to watch. Those 2 players, star caliber talent. I cannot wait to watch that game. We'll jump in and kind of dive into the specifics a little bit of some teams. You mentioned it, Graham, just now. Ari, USC with a huge, huge loss. Juju Watkins out for the rest of the season. That ACL tear early on in the Mississippi State game, just totally devastated for her. Thoughts and prayers for a very speedy recovery. She's going to be back, and I know she's going to be just fine. But again, just horrible and a tough loss for USC. How far can the Trojans go without the best player, arguably, in the sport on the floor?
I mean, I was lucky enough to see Juju Watkins play healthily. Is healthily a word? But healthy.
It's a word on this show.
Hey, new word. But I was lucky enough to see her play when she was healthy, and you know, the offense and the defense works around Juju constantly. But you brought up the perfect person. Kiki Iriafen, that 36 points was pivotal for this team and shows there's more than one star on that roster, and they have the ability to keep going. I think they win their next game. But then when you start getting up to those superstar matchups, it's going to maybe be the road for USC, I think, here. Without Juju, without that star power, and you're losing 30-plus points in a game, I don't think they move it past that. But you know, what's to say? That could be wrong, and they could move forward.
Yeah, and that freshman trio's really got to step up.
Yeah.
I'm going to be interested to see how they respond to that adversity and step up in the big moments coming up for them. Another team that's kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum, looking dominant and really showing no signs of slowing down anytime soon, Ian, that's South Carolina. They're looking for back-to-back national championships. Dawn Staley has done a remarkable job with the Gamecocks. In your opinion, how has she been able to elevate this program and make them a championship contender year in and year out? They're always in the mix.
Well, I was lucky enough to be around this team this past weekend, see how they go about their business, see what this team is all about. It all comes down to one word for me, and that's culture. Now, you can get all the recruits you want, but if you don't have a culture to bring them to, it's not going to work. And the culture that South Carolina has is a culture of winning. They bring in these 5-star recruits, these 4-star recruits. They may not be expecting to play right away, and that's okay. South Carolina has roles for all of their players. Their top 2 scorers come off the bench, and 3 of their top 5 scorers come off the bench.
Ridiculous.
It's unbelievable. Now, it's a draw, of course, when you win, but you have to bring in players and treat them successfully in your program to continue that success. That's what Dawn Staley has done with this program, and that's why South Carolina continues to win. It's new players finding new roles within a winning program, and they don't really care about themselves. They just care about the team.
How they came out in that third quarter to start that second 2 quarters against Indiana was something I really haven't seen a lot of teams do ever. That they're in the driver's seat certainly to pave their way to another national championship. Graham, of the teams remaining in the Sweet 16 in this bracket, they're all 1 to 5 seeds, and not many, if any, upsets at all in this tournament. Same could be said for the men's tournament as well this season. Why is that, in your opinion, and do you think that's going to be the new norm for March Madness and college basketball national championship tournaments going forward?
Yeah, I hate to say it. I think it is the new normal just because of where we are with the portal and with NIL. I mean, good players want to play with good players. That's just kind of the fact of the matter, and it's unfortunate, frankly, because we get rid of the Cinderella stories. We get rid of the 10, 12 seeds that can make a great run because they have great culture. But how far can great culture take you when you've got Kiki Iriafen transferring to USC to play with Juju Watkins? It just feels like that's a little too much. I mean, we saw so much in 2024, Tamia Gardner going to UCLA to play with Lauren Betts. There are so many pieces that are available in the college game. And something that you mentioned a little bit earlier, Ian, before we actually got onto the show, is that players in the women's game stay for longer. So it's easier for these great players to build culture with each other because they're often around each other more. And with high schoolers having the ability to pick and choose, I want to play for Dawn Staley, and she's going to offer me money.
Yeah.
Pretty
hard to turn that down.
That's a tough thing to choose,
I think what it's going to take is either NIL changes where every school can offer the same amount of money, or a Caitlin Clark scenario, where a phenomenal player chooses to stay home, play for their home college or university, and then just skyrockets that program.
You bring up a lot of good points. I don't want to be like that one YouTube fitness guy that looks at one case study that was done one time and make a claim. I'm going to need to see more and more tournaments like this before I'm able to jump on that bandwagon and be like, yeah, March Madness probably not going to be madness anymore, not very many upsets. But we certainly look like we're trending in that direction, which maybe it balances out, maybe it doesn't. Last question before we go to break. The matchups you guys are most excited for and potential matchups you guys are most excited for in the rest of the tournament.
Who wants to go first?
I'll take a stab at this one, and this is going to be a potential matchup. Now, this is going to be a championship matchup I'm taking here. If we're able to see South Carolina and UCLA in the championship, that would just be cinema.
I couldn't agree more.
I think that would be amazing as well. But you know what? I'm going to go back a little further. I'm going to say Maryland, coming off the game they just had with Alabama, and you have South Carolina. I'm so excited for that. I think it's going to be a duel. It's going to be a battle. You have a Big Ten team who's hustling, who's playing the best basketball they can, and you have South Carolina who's just such a dominant team, and we know that they can make it so far.
Yeah, I'm also going to stay in the Sweet 16. I don't want to progress too far and get my hopes up, and then it doesn't happen. I'm really looking forward to Duke and North Carolina.
Yeah.
2 seed, 3 seed, both ACC teams that were separated by half a game in the regular season. It's going to be so good. They've played each other twice. The first time in January, UNC won in overtime. The second time in February, Duke won pretty handily. So not only is this to advance to the Elite Eight, but it's for bragging rights. And when it comes to Duke and North Carolina, those bragging rights mean a lot. So I think it's going to be a true bloodbath rivalry game. I can't wait.
I got two real quick. I've mentioned it a couple times, TCU and Notre Dame. I think that's going to be the most exciting matchup out of all the other Sweet 16 matchups. And then if we do get this one, it'll also be in the national championship. TCU and Haley Van Lith going against LSU. Haley Van Lith was at LSU before. That has some storyline potential right there. That one could be really, really fun. Coming up after the break, though, we've got picks from the Sweet 16 to the national championship. Back in a moment.
You're watching IU Student Television. The Toss-Up, Fridays on IUSTV.
Welcome back to the Toss-Up, everyone. It's a women's basketball March Madness edition of Bracket Breakdown. Here's how it works. The four of us each have a quadrant of the bracket to analyze. We will all pick one team from our corner of the bracket to make the Final Four. After those teams are locked in, each of us will pick who makes the national championship game and who wins the title out of those four squads. Ari, you are up first. You have the Spokane 1 quadrant. That's UCLA versus Ole Miss, LSU versus NC State up in the top left.
All right, well, as they say, ladies first, but we're coming in hot, UCLA, Ole Miss. Now, I feel like this one's a little bit obvious to me, but UCLA has Lauren Betts, who has been unstoppable, and they've been treading the right direction the entire season with that Big Ten championship win against USC, and then now just playing a complete game in the tournament. Lauren Betts having 30-plus games, 10 rebounds. The sky is the limit. I think they take this, but you know what? Ole Miss has played some top contenders all across the board. They played teams like this throughout their entire season. So maybe they could come in and upset UCLA, but I do think UCLA takes this one all the way. And then as for LSU and NC State, I think LSU is going to take this one as well. You have such a dynamic trio. You got the Flage, who's going to do so well in this, I think, matchup as well. I mean, don't count NC State out. I think we need a potential upset. Everyone's thinking Kim Mulkey's going to go back and do something big again, but you know what? LSU is going to go next, but NC State, I think they're going to keep it close within 10. But Graham, your turn.
You still got UCLA versus LSU. Who you got going to the Final Four out of those?
Oh, well, fabulous. I'm ready to keep going. We have UCLA, LSU, 110% UCLA. Yeah. They're going all the way. Yeah. In my bracket, I have UCLA winning, and I'm going to ride that home.
There you go. So UCLA moving on from the Spokane 1 quad. They say you can't teach height. I think that applies there. Lauren Betts has been dominant all season.
So dominant.
Graham's up.
All right.
Now I'll take the switch.
Yeah, you got the Birmingham 2 quadrant over here on the top right. That's South Carolina versus Maryland, and then UNC versus Duke.
All right, we'll start up top like Ari did. South Carolina, Maryland. We talked a little bit about it. Maryland has been a very exciting team. I don't feel comfortable betting against Dawn Staley in important games.
That's fair.
That's fair. I don't feel comfortable. Fair. So South Carolina, they're making it to the Elite Eight. Now Duke, North Carolina. This is the matchup I was. Duke, North Carolina. This is going to be a great game. Duke is pretty favored right now. They're like 5.5-point favorites. Yeah. I think it's going to be very close. I think it'll be closer than that. But I do think that Duke is going to come out with the win. They've just got a little bit more offense. They've got a couple more options that I think they can go to if they are in need. And then also their defense is, I think, up to par with North Carolina. So South Carolina, Duke.
I know what you're going to say. We all know what you're going to say.
You already kind of prefaced this.
I hate to do it because I love it when 1 seeds lose. But South Carolina is just such a stout 1 seed. And, I mean, you never bet against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. You never bet against Dawn Staley in the playoffs. I mean,
it's the culture.
It's the culture, exactly. So they've looked phenomenal. I think they could have been the overall 1 seed. I think South Carolina is going to easily make it to the Final Four.
So in the IUSTV sports bracket so far, we've got from Spokane 1, UCLA going to the Final Four, and then in the Birmingham 2 quad, South Carolina also going to the Final Four. Ian, Birmingham 3 down in the bottom right, Texas, Tennessee, Notre Dame, TCU. That one's going to be a good one.
See, this is a lot like Graham's region. I'm going to go pretty simple here on the Texas-Tennessee matchup. I'm going to take the 1 seed in Texas. They've looked unstoppable at times this year. Tennessee a 5 seed. You know, they've made some nice runs. They beat Ohio State pretty handily, but I just can't bet against Texas in this situation. Now, you said it, Riley. This one right here. This could be
That's the one.
This could be the game of the tournament so far. I have extremely high hopes for this. I've been going back and forth on this game for the past 2 days, and I still can't make a decision. But it's time. The buzzer's winding down. I have to take my shot here. You go the young guns here with Notre Dame, the experience with TCU. Notre Dame is favored in this game, at least on ESPN, by about 80%. But I'm taking the experience. I'm taking TCU to win over Notre Dame. But I think this could be potentially an overtime game. It could be within 5 points. This is going to be an absolute thriller. Keep your eyes on this one, 1 p.m. on ABC. Now, Texas TCU. It's a battle for the state of Texas. They say everything is bigger in Texas. And that is also going to include the seed. I'm taking TCU to the Final Four.
TCU to the Final Four.
The 2 seed over the 1.
So TCU is going to take on South Carolina. UCLA will take on, I've got picking Spokane, number 4 down here. USC, Kansas State, Oklahoma, UConn. All right, so I'm going to start also up top here between USC and Kansas State. This is the second time ever that these two teams have met. Despite losing Juju Watkins early on in the Mississippi State game, the Trojans still put up 96 points against a Mississippi State team that only gave up 80-plus points 6 times this season. That's an incredible job and a great way to respond from the Trojans. That trio that I mentioned earlier, that freshman trio that the Trojans have, really going to have to step up and help Kiki, Iriafen. That's Smith, Heckel, and Howell. I'm really looking at them to have a really solid game and play support for Kiki, Iriafen. Here's another thing, too. USC really likes to press, likes to force turnovers, likes to play fast. On the other hand, Kansas State, a little bit more controlled. They like to slow the pace down a little bit, and they're leading the country in assists on every single shot that they, or rather the shots that they take. They're leading them in that category. So I like Kansas State just because they have more experience across the board. Kansas State's going to beat USC. If Juju Watkins was on the floor, I would have taken USC in a heartbeat. Kansas State moves on. OU and UConn. Here's the deal. Reagan Beers is a problem in the paint. When she was transferring over from Oregon State, it came down to 2 teams, OU and UConn, and she chose OU. We're going to see if she made the right decision in this game.
The drama.
I love the subplots.
The beauty of sports, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the thing that UConn has that Oklahoma does not. Postseason Paige. Paige Beckers has been at UConn now. This is her 5th season, and she's been oh so close to that national championship. She can taste it. But she's just fallen short. Her team's fallen short every single year she's been there. I think she's going to be the difference. She's going to elevate the team. And UConn will move on to take Kansas State. I'm going to take UConn to the Final Four. So we have UCLA versus UConn, and we have South Carolina versus TCU. Who's going to the national championship? Who's winning it? Ari first.
All right, I already kind of said my answer, but I got to stay strong with it, and I'm going to say UCLA is going to the final alongside, I think I'm going to go South Carolina. I think Dawn Stanley is a powerhouse. If you saw her during that Indiana game, coming out of the half, in that third quarter, they were just such a dynamic team that is unstoppable. These two will battle against each other in a bloodbath of a battle. I think it could be almost like a Maryland-Alabama game, offensive and defensive at the same time. But I think I'm going to take Lauren Betts and UCLA for the win.
So we got 1 for UCLA as national champions. Graham, you're up.
Yeah, we're going to have 2 for UCLA. Mine is the exact same.
UCLA.
Mine is the exact same.
You don't have to fight today, Graham.
I know, yeah. Hey, we were talking about how we might have to put our hands in this bracket. We don't have to.
We're talking about some disagreements before this show.
We're not fighting.
They
it's
worked
all
it out.
good.
They
It's
worked
all
it out.
good.
So, yep, UCLA I'm going to have in the finals match along with South Carolina. Oh, man. I said it was so hard to root against Dawn Staley, but Patrick Mahomes lost to the Eagles. I think South Carolina is losing to the Bruins. I've got UCLA winning it all.
Hey, true words have never been spoken. So we've got 2 for UCLA. Ian, I'll let you go ahead.
All right.
Make your picks.
I'll step right up to the plate
Who's going to the
here.
national championship game? Who's your winner?
Stepping up to the plate, and I'm going UCLA in the national championship game. I think it's pretty agreed upon, at least here. I think UCLA has the better team than UConn. I think they'll handle UConn pretty well. I'm taking South Carolina to the championship as well. I like the postseason pedigree of South Carolina. TCU they don't have enough for me to beat the Gamecocks, but I'm taking South Carolina in this national championship game. I'll take the other side. It's like, did I betray you or something? Like, come on.
Both of our faces, we go,
Yeah.
I saw what this team was about up close. It's a little bit of recency bias for me as well, but I like South Carolina a lot. They have balance. They have a deep roster. Anybody can play any role, and Dawn Staley is one of the best coaches in the country, so I'm taking the Gamecocks.
UCLA, South Carolina. Here's the deal. UConn has made it to the Final Four 6 of the last 7 tournaments. They've been to the Final Four 22 times in the last 3 decades. And as I mentioned it, Paige Becker's been oh so close to getting that national title, but she hasn't gotten it yet. I've said before I don't like dynasties, but I like UConn. Give me the Huskies to win the national championship, their first since 2016. Wow. That is Geno's 12th, and UConn puts themselves back up on top of the mountain of college women's hoops. That'll do it for the show this week. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to continue the discussion and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at IUSTV Sports. And while you're at it, give our Sauce Up socials a follow on those same platforms as well. We've got a lot of awesome basketball coming up in the next few weeks. So you're not going to want to miss a single millisecond of the action. With that, there's one thing left to do, so toss it up, find out if we'll catch it, and as always, we'll see you next week. God bless everyone.
Thanks for watching IUSTV Sports. Be sure to subscribe at IUSTV and follow us on Instagram and X at IUSTV Sports.